Rogue One, a Star Wars story, has been out for a little while, and after having some time to properly digest it, I've decided to share my thoughts. In case it wasn't obvious, there will be massive spoilers for this movie. To put it plainly, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Is it perfect? Not even close, but it accomplishes what it intends to and lets you have fun along the way. We'll get the small gripes out of the way first. The editing at the beginning was a little choppy and disjointed, almost to the point of being distracting. I understand that you have to introduce half a dozen new characters that no one has ever seen before, but would it kill you to do it one at a time? Just as an example, we see Bodhi arrive and demand a meeting with Saw Gerrera, and then we leave. Then we see him talk to Saw Gerrera, and then we leave. Then we see him in a totally unnecessary, bad CGI squid interrogation that, despite advertisements, has no long-lasting effects. Then we leave and basically forget about him until the rest of the characters chance their way into his cell. If we could have had each character's introduction one at a time as their own segment and then waited to intertwine them, instead of splicing together so many unrelated stories at once, I believe it would have been far more palatable. It worked in the Avengers, so we know it can be done. Also, Saw Gerrera's whole part just seems a little strange and out of place. For talking someone up so much, it's surprising how little he impacts the rest of the movie. It didn't really come off like he had ever even met the Ursos, much less been a close family friend. In this instance, I feel like there's a significant portion of missing footage around this part of the movie that would better explain things. Which is entirely possible considering all the reshoots and the number of things that have changed from the trailers that we saw, the final product of the movie. Maybe they just wanted to connect it to the Clone Wars show, but they should have done it in a more meaningful or at least impactful way. Now for the good things. It has connections to the Clone Wars show, and the prequels, and the original trilogy, and Star Wars Rebels. There are so many references and Easter eggs throughout the film. It's such a treat to be fed small, or big, morsels that aren't crucial or even necessary to the plot, but just help to flesh out the universe or tie it together. The only reference I thought was slightly gratuitous was when they had to watch themselves from our two favorite bar patrons. They must have been in a big hurry to get to the nearest terminal out of town, because very soon after, the entire city was destroyed. Maybe they left on the Star Destroyer. Bail Organa makes an appearance because of course he does. He's the rebellion guy. It makes sense that he'd be sitting there in charge of the rebel base. And the fact that this is such a higher quality movie than the other Star Wars films that he's been in helps to retroactively legitimize the prequels. Not that it fixes all of its problems, but every little bit helps. General Syndulla is called by name in the rebel base. Hera from Rebels is an active and prominent part of the rebellion. The Ghost even shows up in the final battle. I won't tell you where, you'll have to go back and look for yourself. Red Leader and Gold Leader from the Battle of Yavin are here and they're back in action fighting the Empire. And the fact that they survived the Battle of Scarif shows just how skilled they are in a fight and how dire the assault on the Death Star is for them not to make it out of that. Speaking of, that's something Rogue One does better than any other Star Wars movie I've seen. It truly gives the feeling that the Empire is a massive, all-powerful machine with all the equipment and all the manpower, and that the Rebellion is nothing more than a ragtag group with no hope of surmounting such an unstoppable threat. The sense of scale really prevailed throughout the movie, and with such close proximity, it does bleed over to the original trilogy movies to make the Empire seem even more threatening. In the same manner, it gives a real sense of immediacy to the original Star Wars film. With the plans having literally just been stolen maybe hours before, the Rebellion is desperately trying to get them back to their base so that they can discover where this weakness is that they know exists in the battle station. That's another thing. This movie addresses one of the oldest so-called plot holes in the Star Wars franchise. How could the Empire not know that there was a tiny hole that would blow up their whole station? Well, this movie is your answer. One man devoted his life to the Empire not because he cares for them or believes in them, but because he knew that without him, they would achieve terrible destructive power with no one to keep them in check. He spent his life sabotaging the Empire's greatest weapon and risked everything he had to let the people know who could use that information. A noble feat to be sure. I just wish the movie had spent a little more time letting us fully appreciate the gravity of the situation. We get a short reunion between family before we're whisked off to the next set piece, and I wish that we'd been given longer to take in the emotion or the significance of such a heavy moment. In a similar fashion, this movie gives us more of an insight into the inner workings of the rebellion and Bail Organa himself, so it makes it seem a little odd that we don't get any time to mourn him in A New Hope, either from Leia or from the rebels at large. In the same manner, the rebellion was shown not to be quite as unified as they may have been presented in the past, with all their major decisions being discussed in a highly divisive council. So again, it seems a little odd that this aspect is not addressed in the original. If anything, the rebellion seems more unified than ever before after losing a generous portion of their ships and some of their greatest leaders. The last half hour or so of this movie starts the mission to finally get the plans, and once it kicks off, there's a non-stop action ride until the very end. There's infiltration, assaults, dogfights, explosions, and pretty much anything else you might think would look cool in a space movie. All the characters are given things to do and do them well to accomplish their mission. Star Wars has done good space battles and good land battles, but they've never quite stitched them together as well as this movie does. It's a thrill ride to see such pulse-pounding action on screen. Then the movie has the fortitude and the respect for its audience and its source material to make the tough call and have every single one of the new characters die. It may have been inevitable for such a perilous mission, but each of our heroes, and even the new villain, find a way to perish before the end of the day. Which is sad, but again, it helps to highlight the seriousness and severity of what they had to do here, and does carry over to the other movies so that you can know that the cost of victory was high. Last year's Star Wars movie, The Force Awakens and Rogue One, are in a way both love letters to the original Star Wars movie. But they go about it in very different ways. The Force Awakens captures the majesty and adventure of the hero's journey and repackages it for what it means to be a Star Wars movie for a new generation. And I thoroughly enjoy it for that. Rogue One delves deeper into the behind the scenes of the universe, emphasizing the lived-in feel that was popularized by the original and showing us just how costly and important the start of our travels were a long time ago. Some people have pitted these two movies against each other, comparing them, and after a little bit of thinking, I've determined that I enjoy watching The Force Awakens more as an adventure film for pure fun, but I can appreciate Rogue One more for the story that it tells and the role it plays in the larger narrative. I have more to talk about the characters, but for the sake of time, that could be another video. When they first announced these side story Star Wars movies, I was skeptical, but once the trailers began coming out, I softened up a bit, and upon seeing the movie, I found it to be a worthy addition to the Star Wars mythos. While I'm still skeptical of doing stories of established characters, if they keep producing products like Rogue One, they can expect my support. How did you like Rogue One? Where did it rank in the Star Wars saga for you? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today.